October 11th meeting of the Traffic and Parking Advisory Board to order. Good afternoon and welcome. The Traffic and Parking Advisory Board reviews items of interest regarding parking and traffic items. We are an advisory board, and our favorable recommendations today will go before the Oshkosh Common Council. The council can accept or reject any recommendation from this board. If you don't agree with our decision, you can discuss the item with any council member. If the board does not recommend an item, a common council member may sponsor a new ordinance regarding this item. All items require 2 readings before the common council. The first reading will take place on Tuesday, October 25th at 6 p.m., and you will be allowed to comment on an item at that time, though the council will take no action. On Tuesday, November 8th at 6 p.m., the item will be on a second reading, at which time the council will take action. You will again be allowed to speak. For this afternoon's meeting, I will read each agenda item, at which time, if you'd like to speak, please step up to the podium and give your name and address. I do ask that you keep your comments pertinent to the agenda item. The item will then come back to the board for discussion and action. So I don't see anyone here from the public to comment other than on specific items. Is that true? All right, then I'd ask that we take roll.
Staple.
Here.
Wanschneider.
Here.
Brzezinski.
Here.
Hanson.
Here. Okay,
Here's not here.
and that's a
Hartman.
quorum, right?
And then Hartman.
Here.
Okay,
Yep. So we
all
have
right.
quorum.
Then I'd ask we stand and say the pledge. There's a flag over there, and there's one behind me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I would look for a motion to approve the minutes of the previous
Move
meeting.
it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? And then we'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, thank you. I see no old business on the agenda. Is that correct, Jim?
Yes.
Okay, then we're on to new business. And the first is about parking on Oregon Avenue. Would you like to talk to that, Jim?
Yep. Yeah, so this was just a request that I got from a citizen to basically, Tamara's had this cupcake shop here, and now she's pretty much relocated over to off Highway 21 over near Lowe's. So they were wondering why we still had the 15-minute parking here, which obviously was back when this was operational. So I did talk to Tamara's, and she said she no longer needs that. This isn't a retail location, and she doesn't foresee that being a retail location again, so she was fine if we wanted to remove it. And the citizen said that would be helpful for especially some of the customers that are going to some of these other businesses in the area. So we are requesting to remove this 15-minute parking.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody want to make a motion to recommend we approve this or reject this?
Move it.
To approve?
To approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Do we need to take a roll call vote, or can we just do a general all in favor?
Well, we can do a roll call. So Staple,
Aye.
Wanschneider,
Aye.
Brzezinski,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
and Hartman.
Aye.
All right.
It's carries.
Thank you very much. And the next thing we have is a presentation on traffic impact in Webster Stanley current site.
Yes, so as most of you know, Webster Stanley, they're going to be constructing the school district is going to be constructing a new elementary school on that site in the coming year or two. So we did ask that they do a traffic impact analysis, which they have done along with their consultants. So I put a copy of basically the layout in your packets, but I'd asked them to come and just present what their findings were. There's only one specific action item at this point, but I asked him to come and kind of present what the traffic impact analysis they did and what the findings were. So we have Nate from Bray Architects, Jim from the school district, and Don from Taddy here, and I'll turn it over to them. So I don't know if you want to maybe just pull up a chair. Okay. Bring it from here. Probably easiest. Actually, why don't you guys just sit here, because then you got the microphone.
Hello, thanks for having us. My name is Nate Constantine with Bray Architects, and this is Don Lee from Traffic Analysis and Design, Toddy. And we have a short PowerPoint to go through with you. Again, thank you for having us. As far as the site goes, this is a conceptual site plan of the new building on the site of the Webster Stanley School. The new school may be named something else. The school district is going through a naming process here in the coming months, but could be Webster Stanley, could be something else. Specific to this site, I think it's just worth noting no major roadway changes on this site plan. Melvin, Grove, Seward, and Hazel largely untouched. The inverted C or backward C shape is the building itself, with staff parking lot accessed off of Grove. Primarily, I would call it support access, such as dumpsters, such as food service deliveries off of Melvin on the north side, bus drop-off and parking on the north side in that area there. Parent drop-off and pickup along Hazel Street. Then we do have, similar to the middle school project for those that were a part of that last year, we do have during school hours temporary parking. This would not be accessible during school drop-off or during pickup, but this would be short-term parking throughout the school day. And then Seward Trail, after discussions with the city, is planning to remain a one-way in its current direction. So as Mr. Collins mentioned, we're only looking, I think, for action on one item, and that's specific to the new sidewalk crossing. There's been extensive studies done about getting pedestrian access as well as car access to the site. And with the proposed renovations as far as accessing the building off of Hazel Street, we are proposing there's currently a sidewalk in this crossing in this location. That crossing would be moved down to better facilitate students and people accessing the site. This would have some coordination with the city of Oshkosh, Parks and Rec Department, as far as a new sidewalk getting to this side of the street. But I believe that is the one access or the action item tonight. Again, Seward Trail remaining the one way in the direction that is currently there. All loading zones currently on the site would remain as is. But high level staff parking, access for deliveries, bus drop off, pickup, parent drop off and pickup, temporary access throughout the school day, pedestrian crossing here, and Seward Trail remaining as is. So with that, I'll turn it over to Toddy to go through the study.
So we completed a study looking at the intersections. All the blue dots up here are the intersections that we studied along Melvin, Lincoln, Grove, and Hazel, including the driveways along Melvin and Grove. We did traffic counts at all of the intersections in mid-May of this year in 2022, specifically on Tuesday and Wednesday, May 24th and 25th. We did counts in the morning from 6:45 to 8:45 and in the afternoon from 2 to 6. So basically the morning, during the morning rush and during the afternoon rush, and making sure that we got the right peak in there. We found that the peak hours, which coincide with the school bell for the elementary school, were 7 to 8 a.m. and that coincides with the 7:45 a.m. bell, and 2 to 3, which coincides with the 2:45 afternoon bell. We then took the counts, and we utilizing the growth rate from the region, we forecasted out to 2034 and used that as our background traffic volumes, and then added on top of that the traffic volumes that are projected from the school. For the school assumptions, there's 3 feeder schools, which are shown up in the right there: Merrill, Webster, Stanley, and Washington. So the areas shown in yellow, green, and blue, that's the feeder area. The opening year population is similar to the population today, which is right around 575 students with potential to grow to 600 students. So for the study, we used the 600 students and we used it out into the year 2034. We assumed 3 to 4 buses to accommodate the future year projections, and then we made assumptions for how many students would be bused versus how many would be walking and biking, and how many would be parent drop-off. And those were different percentages for each specific area, for each of the different feeder school programs. Those were then applied to the study intersections that I had shown in the previous slide, all those blue dots, and then we did our analysis. We did an analysis for the opening year, 2024, and we did an analysis for the, again, design year, 10 years out for 2034, looking at both the AM school arrival and the PM school dismissal. We did also, as Nate said, we looked at Seward as operating under the one-way operations, and then we also looked at it as operating under two-way because the access point along Seward is being removed, so we looked to see if there would be a benefit to operating it as one-way or two-way, and that was part of that was our analysis. The results of I'll talk about the results in just a second. Just to show you the trip generation comparison. So at the bottom chart here, this line right here is the proposed elementary school with 600 students. Here's the volumes that are expected. The bottom 2 lines are the existing school that are out there, the existing elementary school and the existing middle school. Those were summated down at the bottom here. So the top line here is the proposed school, so you can see that matches this top line here. The bottom line, this existing, is adding this 810 and this 370 together. This is the daily. This would be the total in the morning. This would be the total in the evening. And the bottom is the difference between the existing and the proposed. So it shows an increase of 180 daily trips, 45 morning trips, and 55 evening trips. So that's, as you can see, not much of an increase at all. But to do a conservative analysis, so we did a sensitivity analysis. And what we did was we said, okay, you know what? Let's just assume that we're having a new school placed right on top of what's out there today. That's what showed up on the top. Again, this 600 students here, the volumes match up here. And then we included reductions for walking, biking, busing, and for parking. And then we ended up with what's shown here is the numbers that we actually used in the analysis. So an increase of 240 trips in the morning and an increase of 140 trips in the afternoon on top of what's actually happening out on the roadway today. That's what we plugged into the model and ran in the analysis. So you can see it's a very high conservative analysis that we did. Now, I don't expect you to see any of this. This is just a table, and what this shows in all the detail, and I'm happy to show anyone this after, but what this shows is the delay out on the roadway for each movement at each of those blue dot intersections. And what this shows is that under the existing condition, everything operates perfectly fine, and under the ultimate condition, everything operates perfectly fine. There is one intersection which is up at Melvin and Hazel, so in the very northeast corner. That's where we expect just a slight delay, but again, this is using higher numbers than what we expect out there. So basically, from a sensitivity analysis, everything's expected to operate just fine, but it did show 3 seconds of delays higher than the normal threshold. In addition to doing an analysis at the intersections, we also looked at parking. Now, we don't really expect any high-end events. The school district doesn't expect any high-end events at the school, other than an occasional PTO meeting or an occasional school concert, maybe twice a year. So what we did was we looked at a sporting event in the gym, assuming that it's at maximum capacity, according to discussions with the school districts. There's a potential that this could happen, but if it did happen, it would happen on a weekend, on a Saturday, not during the school week. And again, this is just to try to get a feel for the parking availability at the school and around the area. So again, we assumed a maximum capacity, 244 people with 2 teams, coaches, refs, scoreboard operators, et cetera. The parking spaces that are on site equate to about 91 spaces, which is the 80 spaces behind on the west side of the school and 11 additional spaces out in front. The basketball game, the participants, and based on this capacity, it equates to a demand of 180 spaces. So that leaves a shortage of 89, or right around 90 spaces. Now, this doesn't take into account neighborhood parking, and there is plentiful neighborhood parking, even along Hazel Street, that would likely be utilized during that time. But even if there was no neighborhood parking, the softball field, or the large parking structure the large parking lot across the street, we looked at just the north half of that lot, and there's 126 spaces there. So there's more than ample space there, with an excess of 37 if all patrons were directed to park over there. You would have ample parking. And again, that's without any street parking. So based on the study, the recommendations were to keep Seaward Trail as it is today, operating one way. And the reason that recommendation was made, even though it will operate, all intersections operate fine, whether it's one way or two way, by changing the operation to two-way operation, what that does is it adds turning movements at this main intersection on Hazel. So you'd have turning movements: left turns in, right turns out, left turns out, right turns in. You'd have all those movements happening at the same time as parents would be picking up and dropping off along Hazel Street. So it just adds a level of, congestion's not the right word, but in general, a little bit more congestion to the corridor. So the recommendation was to leave it as it is, operating one way. It's not a high volume movement anyway. Hazel Street, consider sidewalks on the east side of the street. That's shown with the blue line here. That was it's not a recommending to put them in, it's to consider putting them in. And it's something that I believe the city's already looked at, but and it's likely not going to move forward with. But it was something as a recommendation to take a look at and see if that would make sense to put that in. Pedestrian treatments, there's an unusually hazardous transportation plan being looked at right now, and the recommendation is to, using that plan, come up with pedestrian treatments, such as continental-style pedestrian crosswalk pavement marking, which is the ladder crosswalks, pedestrian crossing signage, crossing guards, and then potentially an RRFB, a rectangular rapid flashing beacon out in front of the school, where right near Seaward, just south of Seaward Trail East there, to allow pedestrians to cross there, along with crossing guards. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Nate.
Yes, so just a couple of images of just our 3D software and what some of the potential movement situations as far as bus parking, for instance, in this image. So this is on the north side of our site. As you can see, the building is to the left in the upper image, and planning for upwards of well, really no more than 4 buses at this site. But all of the existing temporary loading zones would be utilized for bus parking, and the movements support that, as well as additional parking to the west of the bus parking. So just a couple images there. And then just a couple of images of what Hazel Street would look like, again, utilizing the temporary loading zone in front of the school. So the upper left is looking from the south side, looking north, and then the bottom right image is looking from the north, looking south. So that is the end of our presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
We pick our grandson up there pretty regularly, and just the two observations, one on the Seaward Street, number of parents park on there to pick their children up, so making it two-way, I think would eliminate that, obviously, so I think keeping it one-way makes sense. And I think you're right on the Hazel Melvin corner is a challenge, because the students are getting out of school, then they're going up. They're going north on, some are going north on Hazel. So making a left-hand turn in there or even accessing Melvin can be a challenge. And I'm not sure, I don't have a solution. I'm just pointing out that I agree with you, that's going to be a challenge point, and whether we need to do something in terms of just not a left turn at a particular time or whatever, because I just know going through that intersection with children walking back and forth has been difficult.
Sure, and today, the elementary, I mean, you have the middle school and the elementary
Right.
school, and as you know, today, the elementary school exits up here on the north side of the building.
Right.
And a lot of the pedestrians walk across the street, within this area to get to their parents' cars here, well, all along the street, and to some of the side streets where, under the build condition, the main entrances, will be out in the front here. So walking would naturally, likely cross here. So, that gets into the whole, make sure that put down pavement marking, the high visibility crosswalks, and that's a possible potential space for a crossing guard, to allow those pedestrians to cross safely.
And to also address your point of, really using Hazel Street as the parent drop-off. There's been conversations south of Seaward Trail, extending a block or so south, that, that would be a large portion of kindergarten, first grade, parking along Hazel Street south of Seaward Trail, and then encouraging, kind of that lineup of parents for, say, up and down Hazel, so that really, they're not, there's congestion, if that's not the right word, I apologize, but, that being the one point, it is understood.
And the other thing to keep in mind, and I went out and observed both the morning and the afternoon several days, even though the pickup does happen, and the morning usually flows pretty smoothly because it's kind of spread out. The afternoon, you have the parents show up and to park, they park, and then the kids get out, and then everybody leaves kind of at the same time. That congestion that we're talking about is pretty much right within a 10-minute time frame. And again, that's both in the morning and the afternoon, more so in the afternoon. When we do use the word congestion, it does, everything still flowed nicely, but it is a 10-minute time period when that's happening.
Okay. Did anybody else want to comment on this presentation, or was that going to be more for the crosswalk? Anybody else have any questions? All right. Then I guess we would go to the next.
Well, I don't know if you got to open for citizen statements. I don't know if.
Okay. No citizen statements. Okay.
Okay, so then we'll go to the crosswalk. Yeah, just wait till we go through the crosswalk,
sure.
just in case there's
Okay.
any questions. All right, so as these gentlemen had mentioned that, if you want to go back to that first slide, we're talking about the one that showed that, that's it, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, you got it. Basically, they're just proposing moving that crosswalk from the north connection there to the south. So we would remove that one on the north, because otherwise we'd have two crossings that'd be too close to each other. But as they had mentioned, that's closer to the door for the kindergarten and first grade. So basically, we're just asking to move the mid-block crossing from the north to the south there, once the school is constructed.
Wait, it's Seaward? You're moving it to Seaward?
Moving it from the north side of the east leg of Seaward, so from here to the south side of the
Oh,
east
okay,
leg
right
of
where it's
Seaward.
presented,
Here.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Could I have a motion and a second to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, now discussion. Anybody here have questions? Any of the citizens or others in the room have questions? All right. Then, everybody ready to vote? Okay, do you want to read a roll call? Or?
Staple,
Aye.
Weinschneider,
Aye.
Jazinski,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
and Hartman.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay,
All right, well, thank you, guys.
thanks. And I guess staff statements is next, Jim?
I don't have much. The only thing is, I've been getting some calls about the Jackson Street Bridge, which we don't have an ETA on, so I don't have any news on that. You know, I don't have any more information than anybody else does. You know, WISDOT's still waiting for the parts, so.
Wasn't the last thing supposed to be the 18th or,
Yeah, last I heard it was towards the end of November.
oh, November now? I thought it was still in October.
No, it's in November, but I don't have any more information other than that.
Will they be able to close it, put it in the closed position after the boating season? Or?
That was, from what I understand, that was their potential backup plan was to potentially just close it once the navigation season's over.
When did
Which
it go
is
out of
when?
order, in April? Or
What's that?
when did it go out of order, in April? Or?
I don't know exactly, but yeah, something like that.
And
Was
when,
it spring?
when is the end of the navigation
I
season?
think it's the 15th.
That'd be coming close.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few days,
Yeah.
end of the week.
Okay.
So other than that, that's probably the only update I have.
I mean, they went and started, I mean, it took forever to make the one part, and then when they were going back to look at it, they found more damage, so that's how many other more custom parts, and
Yeah.
hey, it's state, not city.
Right.
Okay.
But
Future.
they get the part from a private contractor though, right?
Yeah, but they have to make the entire, CAD software and everything for the machine to even make the part, so it's a whole, 'cause they didn't have any just extra laying around, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's so old they had to actually manufacture the gears and everything, so they start from scratch.
Okay. Any agenda items? I do have one that Dan asked me to bring forward, somebody had requested from him,
Okay.
to talk about the line of sight at the Bowen and Merritt intersection, especially when you're heading east on Merritt, that it's tough to see what's happening.
You mean from, like,
As you're heading
east
east
on
on
Merritt?
Merritt,
Right.
and you come to that intersection to
Yeah.
to see what's happening, I think at sometime at night, the stop signs start flashing, and at that point, it's really hard to tell if you're crossing into somebody or not, so just
Okay.
what may make sense.
yeah, that's an older intersection. I mean, I don't know what our options are. The options we generally, we try to eliminate flash where we can because it is usually a little more hazardous because people tend to disobey that. So that's where we go to more of the actuation with vehicle detection, whether that be through the magnets or through the cameras. However, with some of our older intersections, we have issues with that because of, if we do that, then we have to put pedestrian push buttons in because it won't detect pedestrians. So if you want to cross, you got to hit the push button. And the issue with some of our older intersections is sometimes we don't have enough right of way to put the push buttons in and or to make them ADA compliant, so it gets to be a little bit of a challenge. So I'll talk to our traffic manager, see if he's got any ideas, but generally that's the issues we have with the older intersections and trying to get them to activation. That plus the equipment cost, obviously, but we generally budget a little each year to try to get some of those as we can.
And I hadn't even thought about the ADA stuff, so I'm glad you mentioned that, but if that is an issue there, is there if it's going to be, to make it safer, is there
Right.
some way that a reasonable accommodation, that we can use that if there's no room to have the right of way
Right.
or whatever, just
Yep.
to see.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it. I don't know off the top of my head, but we'll have to see what the options
Okay.
are.
Anybody else have any other future agenda requests? All right, then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.